much for coming. I'd like to thank the Mono Basin Historical Society for doing this event here. It predates me, and I just think this is the perfect place to have it. Unfortunately, we had a little bit of wind tonight, but
just a little.
It's an honor to talk to you all tonight as the owner of this establishment currently. It's pretty fantastic. It's not ever something I thought would happen in my lifetime. My family has a lot of history in this basin, and some of you know that and some of you don't, so I'll just give you a brief explanation of how we got here and why we owe everything we have to the McPherson family. My great-grandfather, Carl Ludwig von Harhausen, immigrated in the early 1900s and homesteaded on the North Shore. What I actually found out not until I bought the inn was that our property that we have now was sold to my great-grandfather by the McPherson family. So everything we have on the North Shore was from the McPherson family. Some of you also know that we own the shrimp plant, which is just here, a little bit across the lake from us. And the McPhersons started the shrimp plant. And the first shrimp boat was actually named after Veneta. The bones of the Veneta lie just down here, just on Barry's property line. And we have the propeller inside, which everybody should check out. A lot of the really amazing family photos are inside now tonight. And also the Mono Inn, clearly now, which is in our family too. So 3 incredibly special properties on the northwest shore of Mono Lake. I was born on our North Shore property down here past the park. I grew up here. I spent most of my life here. And I came to know the basin like not as a visitor or a traveler, but as someone who, you know, spent their childhood on the shores of the lake, playing in the mud and really enjoying the sulfur smell, unlike most people. I feel incredibly lucky, you know, obviously with the help of my amazing parents. I have been running the shrimp plant for them for the past, I don't even know now, 15 years. Now we're doing the Mono Inn, and it's wild. It's a wild ride every day. So we wouldn't be able to do it without, you know, Tom, Jay, our whole staff here, again, my parents. We're incredibly fortunate to have this opportunity to be at the inn. And I hadn't realized it until we bought it, but a lot of my childhood was spent here, even into when I was a teenager working for Sarah in the gallery, and now, you know, every night running the restaurant. So it feels like home, but it doesn't feel like mine. It just feels like I'm the current caretaker, just like everyone else has been before me. I just want to cheers to Veneta and the whole McPherson family for the opportunity to be the 5th strong woman who has ran this restaurant. And it's a true pleasure most nights to do this for you all. And I can't say enough again about just the family that got us here. So cheers and thank you to the McPhersons. I wish Barry was here. We owe everything to you. All of our roots are because of you, and we're so grateful. So cheers to the McPhersons, and may they all rest in peace, and hopefully Barry... Sorry, Rebecca, go ahead. Okay, sure. So Barry was kind enough to share some of the original family photos with me of the McPhersons. So on the north wall, kind of the showpiece of the collection, is Veneta at 18. And so it's just a beautiful picture of her. It's just the crowning, kind of the crown jewel of all the photos we had framed. And then on the fireplace is Wallace D., so her husband, which they separated not long after this place was built. And then on the wall near the podium, or where the podium normally is, that's Wally on the Veneta on the shrimp boat smoking a pipe. Upstairs we have Jack Preston, longtime caretaker and best friend of my great-grandfather in his older years. Behind the bar we have him and Wally raising goats on the island in younger years. And then we also have a portrait of Veneta with Wally when he was a small child that will be hanging. Some Fair Winds to Java poster, just a lot of the history that has happened here at Mono Lake. So we're really proud to show those, and they were really important for us to hang, and we're really excited to share them all with you tonight. And thank you guys so much for coming. I wish it was a little bit more. We just didn't have a lot of time, so it's the best we could do. So thank you so much. Cheers and happy 100 years to the Mono Inn. So thank you.
Thank you, Hillary, and thank you so much for hosting us. Last year, Hillary hosted us before they were even officially open.
Yay.
And so they've been really great to the Historical Society, and we really appreciate it. So now we have a guest who used to teach at our Mono Lake schools. And we're going to be treated to the ghost of Maud Conway. And let's see if we can find Maud. Maud? Hopefully Maud didn't blow away. Oh, here's Maud.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Well, it's a wonderful evening with the Mono Zephyrs visiting us. I know them well. My name is Maud Conway, and I taught a few years at Mono Lake and, well, all the schools in the district, actually. And the school that I taught at was the first one, just a little bit north of here. Now, I was born actually in Nevada, in the Sweetwater area, February 26, 1892. Now, that's where my parents, Patrick and Mary Conway, owned a ranch. I grew up there with my siblings, one brother and 4 sisters. My family's connection to Mono County was in place long before I chose to take a teaching job here. My father's brother, John Conway, joined my father in immigrating from Ontario, Canada, to the United States, and together they worked as teamsters, bringing in necessary supplies to the growing town of Bodie. John later started a blacksmith shop there in Bodie. Both brothers longed to own a ranch, and they chose different areas. My father chose a spot in the shadow of the Sweetwater Mountains in Nevada, and John bought ranch land at the north of here at the base of the Bodie Hills. And I graduated from the University of Nevada in Reno in 1909, and a year later I was living in the Mono Basin. I had reached my goal of becoming a school teacher, and by 1910 I started work at the Mono Lake School, and I lived with my Uncle John and Aunt Mary and their 4 children at the ranch. And I was glad to pitch in with all the work that my cousins did. There's a lot of work on a ranch, you know. And I also taught my cousins how to play the piano. And the whole family enjoyed music. It was a wonderful house to live in. My Uncle John was a fine dancer. At a dance in Bodie once, he won a prize for dancing with a glass of water on his head and didn't spill a drop. Now, I joined in with the family outings. I was a skilled piano player, but I did enjoy my harmonica. And I didn't bring it tonight, but it was a wonderful instrument. In fact, my Uncle John rigged up a device so I could play the harmonica and play the piano while the little girls danced. So I was going to a lot of parties with the family when I could. I was grading papers sometime, you know. And I would bring along my harmonica, and people would join in and clap along. It was quite an evening for us. Now, about working in the Mono Basin in a one-room schoolhouse, it had a pot-bellied wood stove warming the building and drying out all the mufflers and mittens from the pogonip the ice fog that the Mono Basin is known for, along with the wind. And there was a outhouse and a small barn for the students' horses behind the school. Now, on most days, traveling to the ranch was fairly easy. I used a horse and a cart. But some days, when we had snow and ice, a sleigh was needed. Now, on the days that occurred, we would find sometimes that I'd get halfway there, and the road turned to dirt again. Well, you can't take the sleigh on that. So I would unhitch the sleigh and ride the horse the rest of the way. So the journey was different every day sometimes. And most days I had to leave Conway Ranch by 7 a.m. to arrive at the school before 9 a.m. when the children arrived. Now, some of the difficulties of working at the school in the winter, if a sudden severe storm moved in while class was in session, we had to immediately cancel the day's activities and get the children home, because this was very serious to be caught at home. Most of them rode horses, or their parents brought them in wagons. So the parents, knowing that the Test.
There, you're back. Keep going. Use your classroom points That one's got the pin.
test. Can everyone hear me on this newfangled device?
Yes.
Okay. Where were we?
The storm.
So we were talking about severe weather coming to the schoolhouse. We can't run the risk of having the children stuck at the schoolhouse with limited food and water, because all they had was their lunches. And we only had so much wood in the wood pile there. Now, some of you may remember one of the worst stormy periods that I experienced in the Basin was in late February and March of 1911. Travel to school was impossible many of those days. A few minutes after midnight on March 11th, Bodie lost power. They had just got the power at Christmas. And so a repair crew was soon on the way to the Jordan power plant, which was 2 miles from the Conway Ranch. Soon it was learned that the repair crew had found the power plant and the nearby houses completely covered by deep snow of an avalanche. Relief parties were organized, and they headed for the scene of the disaster on skis coming all the way from Bodie. And Bodie had about 15 feet on the level at that storm, so you can imagine how long it took. The Conway Ranch was alerted that the rescue team would need to be housed and fed. I helped my Aunt Mary with baking more bread and preparing places for wet, cold, and tired rescuers to sleep. We strung up drying racks to dry out the wet clothes and gloves. There was only one survivor, Agnes Mason, the wife of the plant's chief electrician. She had spent 60 hours under the snowslide, next to her dead husband. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Carl. So she was loaded onto a sled and taken downhill to the Conway Ranch. Dr. Otto Krebs from Bodie was called, and he came to the ranch on skis to care for her. By Sunday, there were plans for her to return to Oakland, where her family was from. Her ordeal resulted in the amputation of one of her legs at a hospital in Oakland. Now, many of the rescuers from Bodie were men that we knew well, or at least were acquainted with. And I spoke quite a bit with one fellow named Andrew Sturgeon. Our new friendship led to a romance and later marriage. Now, I taught at Mono Lake from 1910 to mid-1912. In 1912, 1913, I agreed to work at Bodie as there was a need there. Bodie had a big 2-story building with room for 3 separate classrooms, but it was a quiet time when I was working there. The Standard Mining Company had mostly suspended operations by 1913, and it led to a lot of families leaving town. I had about 51 students there in Bodie, but 43 were the average daily attendance. And I taught and shared principal duties with Mr. Bristol, and also teaching was Mrs. McElroy, who had been a teacher at the Scandavino Ranch. Now, I only spent 1 year there, and where do you think I went back again? Mono, of course, yes. I loved working in Mono. Now, about this time, though, I was asked to become a member of the Mono County Board of Education. Now, while my work in the classroom helped prepare students for success in the future, I felt that my work on the Mono County Board of Education was even more important in some ways. Many of you know that I valued education for children, all children. I also felt the selection of properly educated teachers is the first step to aiding our students on the path of learning. I was happy to see the newspaper in Bridgeport take note of the work of the Board of Education at one of its semi-annual meetings beginning May 19th, 1913. If I may, if it doesn't blow away, I'd like to read you a bit of the article about the testing of applicants for teaching positions. The newspaper reported, the subjects required to be taken on the examination are orthography, grammar, arithmetic, geography, word analysis, penmanship, elements of bookkeeping, history of the United States, nature study, composition, physiology, music, drawing, reading, theory and practice, civil government, general history, algebra, philosophy, English and American literature, and geometry. The board will be in session about 2 weeks and have a large amount of work before them, correcting all the examination papers of the county school examination of April and selecting questions for the examination to be held next April. So you can see we were quite busy. The session lasted 2 weeks doing all this work. And the board also discussed teachers' salaries and the importance of a fair wage for qualified candidates. In my career in schools, and I taught at different schools, I did teach at Mono, I taught at Bodie, I was even substituting a little bit at the Scandavino Ranch, and also up in Antelope Valley to the north of us here. So I went all over. And my monthly wages in all these positions ranged between $80 and $100. Teachers, and that was a monthly wage, and teachers